On the case of People versus Conrad Robert Murray, Dr. Murray is present in court with counsel, Mr. Chernoff, Mr. Flanagan, Mr. Gorgian, Mr. Pena. The people by their counsel, Mr. Walgren, Ms. Brazil. Detective Scott Smith, once again, is on the witness stand. All the jurors and the alternates are present as well. Good morning, everyone. And to the jurors, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you had either a quiet day off or a productive day off at work yesterday. And once again, thank you for your continued courteous behavior and your patience. Detective, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
You acknowledge, sir, you're still under oath and still sworn to tell the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We're going to have a resumption of the playing of the audio, Mr. Walgren.
Yes, Your Honor. And I believe we were on page 86, somewhere around line 13.
We'll restart. Page 86, approximately line 13, ladies and gentlemen.
I've actually queued it up a few seconds prior to where we ended up.
All right, let's give the jurors just a moment. Are all of you on the page? Affirmative? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And you were doing that successfully the 2 nights prior. Some little restlessness, like you mentioned, everything up until this night. The night that this happened.
Can't go back.
He's just wide awake after you've done what you could for him.
Yes.
And he's requesting more, and then ultimately he requests the milk.
Yeah. Okay. So what I did at that time, I realized that maybe even though they have not studied that agent like that on a regular daily basis to a patient, and studies haven't shown that you can develop dependency, he was signs of withdrawal. And whether that was all physiological, psychological, or mental, his dissatisfaction that he wasn't getting the milk, probably was involved in that process.
So at the hospital, when they pronounce him and the other detectives talk to you for a little bit, what happens then? What do you do?
What did I do after talking to them?
Yeah.
Well, after talking to the detectives, I give them my cell phone where they can contact me. It was now very important to console Mrs. Jackson, the mother of Michael. I had never met her before, but when she came into the hospital, the first thing was, how do you bring the news to her? I was also told that she had a heart condition. So I then asked them to be very, very careful in giving information to her. Was there any other family member present at the time? No. She was the only one there. His father was either in another state, but clearly not close. And I can't tell about the other siblings. But
did you leave the hospital, or did she come to the hospital?
She came to the hospital. So they brought her into a room down the hall, and I went in there with the emergency room physician who was treating her, whom I was with all the time through his code, and we were going to break the news to Mrs. Jackson. So the doctor started to tell her that, her son came in and he was having difficulty breathing, and they tried everything, and she said, well, how is he? He's not dead, is he? And the doctor said yes. And she broke down, very weeping. We stayed there, held her hand. The doctor left. I stayed, and then I asked for the social workers to come in, or psychologists, whichever the hospital had. They brought the social team. They brought the head of psychology, and I asked them to, based upon the news that Mrs. Jackson received, to please help her, take care of her at this time. My next question was, where are the children? I was not aware that the children were brought to the hospital. I was told that they were in another room offside and they were having something to eat. They said the children had to be made aware of the condition, and they needed to know. So how best do we do it? So I spoke to Frank DeLego, he's Michael's manager, Frank DeLego, and he said he would go in there with me. I said, well, let's get someone else too that they pretty well have good camaraderie with. And this was brother Michael Amir. So Frank DeLeo, myself, and Michael Amir, with a social worker, went into the room where the 3 children were having something to eat. I walked in, and I'm not sure who spoke first, but somehow or the other they asked the questions, and the children found out that Daddy wasn't doing well, that he had passed away. And then they really were weeping, really weeping. I stayed there, I hugged them all, give them comfort to Paris, comfort to Prince, comfort to Blanket, which is the last little guy, because whenever they were sick, they would always ask for Dr. Conrad. Please call Dr. Conrad, Daddy. And I gave them comfort. Mrs. Jackson was not in that room. The Mrs. Jackson, his mother. After they cried and cried and cried, his daughter uttered a lot of words of unhappiness, and she would live alone without her dad, and she didn't want to be an orphan. And real sad, real sad. She's like my daughter. And I told her, we will take care of her. Frank Durand said that he would take care of her also. And she asked me, Dr. Murray, he said, you save a lot of patients, you save people with heart attacks, and you couldn't save my dad. I said, I tried my best. And she said, I know that, Dr. Murray, at least I know you tried your best. I know you tried your best, but I'm really sad. I wouldn't wake up in the morning and I wouldn't be able to see my daddy. And she cried and was very sorry. And then she asked to see him. And then that was another thing. How do you let the children see him? So before I said yes, I pulled the psychology team together. Yes, I'm doing all of this. And I said, we need some help and we need some backup here. The children need to see their daddy. Do you think it is a good idea? I did not make an independent decision in that case. And then somebody said, well, yes, they should bring closure to this. I said, do you think that they're mature enough to understand it? They said, yeah, they think so. So I had the social worker talk to the children some more. She brought some assistants down. And then they moved Mrs. Jackson, Michael's mother, to a larger room, big conference room. The children also joined the grandmother because she wanted to see grandma. So she went to the grandmother, and she was sobbing and weeping, and they helped a little bit, I think, grandma, but I'm not sure how close they are, because the 2 boys are still kind of running away from a distance, and Paris was more comforted by a relative versus the grandmother, but she didn't want to see her. And while that was happening, I asked them to prepare Mr. Jackson's body, make it as presentable as possible, because I recommended an autopsy be performed, so that the children would be able to view their daddy and at least say goodbye to him at this time. At that time, his family started to trickle in. First person I saw was his brother, Jermaine, I think. I didn't know him before. Some cousins, and then LaToya, his sister, came in. She saw him and they wept, and the family met together. And then, while they were preparing, Mr. Jackson said after he was pronounced and they got him ready in a different room, I went into the bigger room with the family, the big conference room. I sat with the family. Mrs. Jackson, I pulled my chair all the way up to her. The toilet was right there. I held their hands. I asked them if they had any questions. Is there anything I can do to help? They asked me, do you know why he died? My answer was no. And that's the reason why I was recommending to the family to have an autopsy, because I also wanted to know. The questions were not very deep, and they were not anything, but I wanted to be there to answer anything that they wanted, any questions that they may have had, and I did that. After that, the body was ready for viewing. The social workers had control of the children, and they took the entire team, including the head of the department, who stood outside in the hallway, and they went in to see the dad. I also went into the viewing area. There was an officer standing there with me, and there was another glass partition on the other side, and they spent a long time with the family, with the dad. They cried. Other people came in. I went back to the big room, because at that time, after the children had seen the dad, and Latoya and Sue had viewed the body, they were wondering at that time still, would there be more relatives coming? Because they said that there was a 2-hour window, at which point they had to move him to the coroner's office, where the coroner would be there. So I went back into the large room, and I asked Mrs. Jackson if she had a desire to see him.
Mrs. Jackson,
His mother. And she said no.
The dad is there now?
No, he never showed up. So for the next part, I asked the security guard, I said, well, what's going on? Well, now that, the family has been here, Mr. Jackson, they viewed the body, and now they're waiting for a coroner to move the body back. Would you be able to take the children home? What are you going to do? And then the security guard told me that, well, nobody could go into the home at this time, that the house was basically on lockdown. So where would the children go? They were then trying to figure out, well, where they would go with which relative. I was not in charge of this. I waited around again for a while, and then I went to Randy Phillips, because the CEO, president of AG Life. I then spoke to Frank Delano again. I spoke to Brother Michael Amir and other security guards. Is there anything else I can do around here? They said, no, Dr. Murray, we are told now that we may have to be airlifted out of here because of so much of the crowd that's outside. That was the information I had. So then I asked for his brother Jermaine, and so they say he was in the other building. So I walked across another part of UCLA, and then I was introduced to the lawyers of the Jacksons, who was there for a number of years, and some of the press. And they wanted to make a press release. But they wanted me to review the press release to see if it was okay with me.
Jermaine did?
Yeah, Jermaine, and AG, Randy Phillips wanted me to look at that. And the lawyers they wanted me to look at what they had written. And I knew what they had written, and I added it. I added that because although he came in with what was presumed to be a possible cardiac arrest, the underlying cause of that condition is not known until an autopsy is performed. And
This is your brother Jermaine?
I was speaking to the press release and the lawyer